Put the rest of it down.
call the meeting to order and start with roll call on the left.
Frank Mills. Art Haskell.
June Garrett.
Carla Stratton.
And Kip Kimmett.
Ryan Bright. Sean Staub.
Sherry Pollard.
All right. We do have a quorum and all full members are present, so no alternates will be appointed this evening. We're starting with public hearings. Item A, 25-2SP of Strategic Commercial Realty, requesting a special permit for earth excavation and removal on property located at 64 Black Hill Road, Assessor's Map 7, Block 78, Lot 19, RA 60 zoning district. And we have speaking for the applicant.
For the record, John Relation Boundaries LLC. I was present at the last meeting and made a presentation to the commission at that time. We went through the plans in detail, the operations themselves, and our approach to the development of this property. And there were a couple of lingering items that were left for this meeting. The primary being the action by the Inland Wetlands Commission. The Inland Wetlands Commission held their meeting on April 15th and approved the project as it has been presented to this board. And you should have a copy of that approval notice in your file. If you don't have it here. Right. There were some questions that were raised during the last meeting that we will address as well. But there are a couple of items in terms of housekeeping I'd like to add, or at least one. We did not discuss it at the last meeting, although it is part of your record. There is a site restoration bond and erosion control bond that's been submitted with the application in the amount of $147,000. And again, there's a copy here, but you should have that. So one of the more openly discussed topics was surrounding traffic. And we discussed at the last meeting that the application has been submitted to the Connecticut DOT. They have reviewed and approved the plan set that's in front of you, and you have a letter to that effect in the file. In further support of that, we contacted Hesketh and Associates and asked Scott Hesketh, the traffic engineer, to review the plans and the DOT approval. A couple of copies of his report I will submit, and then I will give you the summary. So Hesketh and Associates reviewed the plans, the DOT approval, the traffic counts in the area, the level of service on the roadway, and performed an analysis of that traffic, and that is included in the document that I just provided to you. The first two pages are his cover letter, and I will read from the summary. Based on the relatively low volume of site-generated traffic, it's my professional opinion that the local roadway network will not be significantly impacted by the traffic associated with this earth product excavation operations on the proposed site. The Connecticut DOT District 2 office is prepared to issue an encroachment permit for the proposed driveway. And it goes on with several pages of calculations for his traffic analysis. I do not profess to be a traffic engineer, but we did seek some additional professional opinion to support the DOT's approval that's already been granted. So you have that for your file. Also, someone raised a question in regard to traffic and the work that the trucks do on the pavement. And it didn't occur to me until afterwards, and I don't know how commonly known it is, but those trucks actually pay a highway use fee in addition to their property taxes, in addition to their registrations and insurance. And those fees are per mile based on reports that are required by the Department of Revenue Services on a monthly basis. So they do pay for use of those roads in addition to what the rest of us pay for registrations and taxes and things like that. Those fees range from anywhere from 3 cents to 18 cents a mile traveled, depending on the weight of the vehicle. So you still wanted to just note that as well. We also had some discussions about wildlife and species, and the commission chair requested that staff do some looking into bald eagle notifications, nests, and things of that nature. Ryan did do that. We also looked into that, and we basically came to the same conclusion that if a nest is encountered, the DEP is to be notified, it can't be harmed, moved, or destroyed, and DEP would be notified for an inspection of the site at that time to determine the best way to mitigate that concern. So we did look into it. There isn't essentially a documented policy on it. There are just some directions and the notification requirement. So we do concur that that is the path that we would take if in fact an bald eagle nest was encountered. I also wanted to point out in that regard, our excavation limit is approximately 300 feet from the river at its closest point, and our property consists of approximately 4,000 feet of frontage along the Hoosick River. Of that 4,000 feet, we're only going to be impacting about 20% of it within that 300-foot section. Our excavation area is about 700 feet linearly along the river's edge, and it's in that northeast corner of the excavation where we hit the closest point, right in this area, where we're about 300 feet from the river. The rest of the property and the rest of our work is well outside of that distance. With that said, I believe we've managed or addressed the items that were raised at the last meeting. Again, it was primarily the wetlands decision, and I can take any questions the commission may have at this point.
This is a public hearing, so if there's anybody in the audience with a comment or question on this application, this is your opportunity.
What about,
Okay, if you could step up to the microphone, just state your name and what your question is.
people like Karen Drive? You know, apparently you guys are gonna be digging behind my garage. I have a hand dug well. And I'm concerned about what it's gonna do for that, because 47 years I lived there, never had a problem with that well.
So Mr. LaVoie's property on the map that I'm looking at, on sheet 5, is all the way at the northerly end of Karen Drive. It's here. It is a significant distance from any excavation. Our excavation terminates in this corner. You're back here, so we're not excavating anything next to you, behind your garage, or to the rear of your property.
But the
Our
other part,
excavation terminates in the vicinity of 36 Karen Drive.
right, but what about when you're over here? Where water tables are water tables, so.
We have installed groundwater monitoring wells throughout the site, and we are staying in excavation area B. I believe I stated at the last hearing, the bottom of our excavation is at minimum 5 feet above the water table, so we're not bringing the water table in that area at all.
What's the maximum depth of digging?
20 feet.
20 feet, and that's in the front end of the property, not the back end?
That is in this spot, that's back in the bottom corner in the vicinity of testament number 9.
Okay, but it's still
5
going
feet.
20 feet deep, you're still 5 feet above the water table.
That's correct, and that's based on groundwater monitoring wells that were installed by Clarence Quality Associates. The groundwater logs, or the monitoring well logs, are included on the plan here.
And what's the distance, so the buffer zone required is 100 feet. Are you exceeding 100 feet in any of the areas?
The closest point of excavation, I'm just gonna flip sheets here so I can scale this. We're approximately 200 feet from Mr. LaVoie's property corner, with the end of our excavation.
And the well monitoring is continuous, so as the water table changes, then the excavation depth would change with the water table.
Right, within the wells that are outside the excavation area, the wells that are within the excavation area, it's gonna be excavated around.
So you're gonna do anything about keeping the sand down?
The dust control on the site is proposed to be managed by the water truck, as is almost every gravel site at this point.
And then did it on the other side, which they would come close.
Mr. Lavoie, if you could address your comments to the commission, and then we'll address your questions to the applicant.
When they dug on the other side of me, like if you go down Karen Drive, I'm on the end, and up this way, you can see all the sand. And it just falls all over my vehicles, you can't even have a cookout without them, it's insane.
So what would have to happen, so this is limited, the public hearing to this application. If you have a complaint about another site, then what you have to do is call the zoning office at 860-230-3030. Let them know, because if it's a dusty day, for example, you can contact them and make sure that they're implementing their dust mitigation. So when you call, zoning will go out, inspect, and make sure that they're putting their dust mitigation
Of
out.
what they're gonna be doing now.
Excuse me?
Of what they're gonna be doing now.
So that's with all sites. So for example, with U-Line site, when there's dust, I live on that road, I call zoning, I say, hey, are they implementing dust mitigation? They inspect the site, they make sure they are. So that goes for all sites. So any gravel operation, any building that's happening, if there's a dust issue, you call the zoning office, and then they ensure that they're doing their dust mitigation.
And so how long is this gonna go on for?
Sure. So at the last meeting, the applicant indicated it was a 2.5-year plan. There's 2 phases. One would be 6 months and one would be 2 years. So Mr. Felice, on the map, could you just indicate what part is the phase 1, 6-month, and which one is the phase 2, 2 years?
Sure, excavation area A, which is down in the southwestern portion of the site, closest to the Karen Drive properties. That's a six-month excavation process. Excavation area B, which is the more northern part of the site, would be the area that we've identified for 2 years.
And does that also include the reclamation?
Yes. That's a small, there's only 25,000 cubic yards coming out of excavation area A. That can be done timely.
So the entire project, including reclamation, will be done within that 2.5-year period, give or take a few months.
Correct.
And then there's nothing gonna come up about that area again? You know, nothing's gonna be like, okay, now we're gonna do this in that
So
area.
we can never prevent an applicant from coming back with another application for another project. We can only look at what's before us now and what's allowed in the zone. So this is an RA60 zone. So under the RA60 zone, they are allowed to apply for a gravel excavation permit. There's no zone change request on this property at this time. The special permit is for a 5-year period. We do have the ability to require an administrative review. So we can do that at the 2.5 mark to make sure that they're meeting their goals on the time frame.
And now, if something should happen, they get oil spill, whatever, and my well gets contaminated, what happens then?
Do you want to talk about any bonds you have on the property?
Well, the E&S bond that the town is gonna hold is $147,000. And that's for erosion control measures, that's for, any of those types of things that occur. The plan set includes, directions in terms of anything that would occur, in terms of any kind of spillage of any kind, that has to be reported to DEP, and at that point, DEP would step in. But it's also identified on the plan site that there's no maintenance of vehicles or anything like that allowed on site either. The only service work would be filling the fuel on the vehicles. And there are concrete pads specified in 2 locations where the fuel is required to occur. So there's no maintenance on site for cause of spill. If there were to be a blown hydraulic line or something like that, there's a notification requirement to DEP. That's included in the plan set, which is included in the application materials to the town, and that's enforceable not only by DEP but also by the town.
And what's the time they're gonna be starting every morning? Because I know the other spot that's behind me, off to the side of me, they start 6:30, they start warming up the vehicles.
Sure.
vehicles
The
going.
requested hours of operation are Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday 8 to 12, no Sundays, and no major holidays.
So then they don't stick to that 7 o'clock, but
So once again, if they violate the terms of their application, you have to make a phone call to the zoning office to file a complaint so that they can go to the applicant with the violation. You had a question, John?
You determined which way the groundwater is flowing on the site?
Yes, we did use the groundwater profile. Sheet 3 of the plan set. If you look at excavation area A on that plan set, you'll see some color contours. those colored contours are the groundwater contours. So it is dropping into grade to the west. The black dash lines are the surface contours and the color of the groundwater contours.
So it's, basically headed.
It's heading to the southwest, more to the west.
Any other comments or questions from the public?
My name is Heather Brisson. I live in Palmer Court in Central Village. I'm just curious about the restoration plan of this project. After you're all done, it's gonna actually.
Could you describe the pond and the other reclamation?
Sure. We did discuss it at the last meeting as well. There will be a pond that's constructed on excavation area A that will be treated with 3-to-1 slopes, which will be loam and seeded. The rest of the disturbed areas will also be restored in terms of loam and seed. We specified an 18-inch soil profile, which is 12 inches of subsoil with additional 6 inches of topsoil on top of it, so it can be used. Future uses of the property could be the residential R60 use that's allowed here. It could be extended agricultural uses. The whole back part of the property is agricultural field. So there could be an extension of the agricultural use that exists also.
Is there anything in place saying that any kind of trees they take down, they'll have to replace, or is this just they go in, gravel out, and they're free to do whatever they want?
How much of the property is currently forested versus the fields?
I would say probably 40% of it is fields, and that's just off the top of my head. The whole property is 134 acres. Our excavation area is only 11 acres. So our excavation is less than 10% of the gross land area.
So you're not planning on replanting the trees, it's gonna be left as open field
It'll
and
be
the
left
pond?
as pond and open field, that's correct. But open field with a soil profile that will support vegetation.
Also, I wanted to suggest that there be a survey of the amount of vehicles that go through this location to see the overall impact of having more vehicles go through, see if it's actually a significant amount, if that's possible.
So that was part of the traffic study that was submitted this evening,
With that-
which you can get a copy from
Yes.
staff, right, Ryan? So if anyone in the public wants a copy of that traffic study, they can get that from the zoning office.
And I wanted to make a comment on the bond. You said that if anything goes wrong, 147,000.
147, I'm sorry, kind of bouncing off the chair here, but $147,000 is the bond that's required by the applicant to post to the town. And the purpose of the bond is to make sure that all the erosion sedimentation controls are put in place, meaning sediment fences and all of those things. It's also there in the event that if something were to happen, and property got cleared and was left, the town has $147,000 to reestablish or restore the site to the standards in the plan in terms of the topsoil and subsoil and actually clean up. So that money is, that bond amount is calculated based on the volume of material that would need to be spread, the machine time to do it, seeding and stabilization. And so the monies are set aside as a protective measure if the applicant will fail. The town has the resources to restore the site.
And just question, Ryan, when those, that amount is submitted by the applicant, staff is reviewing it to ensure that they feel it's sufficient to cover the needs. So is that signed off on by the engineer or by you?
No, I think it's pretty standard for something of this size.
I'm just curious if 147 is really would it cover how many people are actually next to this property? How much does it cost for a well to be fixed if these people's wells get messed up? Because I had to redig a new well and I got boarded up to 20,000, and I can't imagine how many other people have wells over here. I don't see how 147,000 could cover.
The 147 is mostly for restoration of the site. It does not cover impact wells. There should not be any impact to the wells. They're nowhere near the property line.
Can't be guaranteed.
Hold on. So they're keeping the digging above the water table, so the water table should not be disturbed. There's no blasting on the site,
There's no last in that.
so all the excavation is being done by machines, not blasting.
Correct. There's no processing on the site either. It's being excavated, taken off site, and that's it.
So it's being picked, loaded, and moved out.
Correct. There's no processing, there's no washing, screening, none of that's occurring on the site. And just to elaborate, that $147,000 is, as the plan stated, to protect the site for ENS controls and for restoration. That's calculated based on a standard meeting schedule, and it's prepared by a professional engineer, submitted to the town and reviewed by the town engineer as well. So it's not just our opinion.
No, I understand, it just doesn't seem sufficient to, things could go wrong.
I do just want to clarify something though.
Yeah.
Excavation area A, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but these will be below the water table without one excavation.
That is correct, thank you.
Because that was
Because that's
constructed.
what we're from.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Any other questions from board members? Any other comments or questions from the community?
Steve Mall, 8 Karen Drive. So, in previous meetings, you mentioned you were gonna remove trees next to our property because you're gonna weaken the trees, they're all pine with shallow rooted areas, and after you make a 5-acre pond, it's gonna, allow a lot of winds to go across that pond, and they're on our property line. So I wanna know who's determining what trees are removed, and what's the buffer zone on that? That's the first question.
Sure, go ahead.
You want to go take this one time?
Yeah, we can take one at a time.
What I stated at the last meeting was we were having an arborist look at the trees to determine which one could be a threat. The trees that are within, that influence area that could be a threat, the applicant has agreed to remove based on, inspection by an arborist. The trees that we're referring to, and we discussed this at the last meeting, those are within the 100-foot required buffer, that are in the zoning regulations for excavations. So technically, we shouldn't be going into that buffer at all, but we understand the concern, and the applicant has agreed to remove trees that are threatened or appear to be threatened based on arborist inspection.
Well, as mentioned before, there's no limbs in the bottom 20 feet of them, so the top everything, the pines are all shallow rooted next to the swamp on the buffer zone between the road. And then you have, not the swamp, the wetlands. You said, I think, was it 50 feet from there to where you start on the pond?
The excavation area is 50 feet in parallel essentially to the wetlands that runs to the northeast and southwest along and parallel to Black Hill Road. Our excavation area is approximately 50 feet from that. There is a resultant berm that will exist, so we'll have a wetlands elevation, there'll be a berm, and then it drops back down into the pond.
There's several trees along this whole area that fell over time. And in here, this 100 feet, our house, one of them was right within 5 feet of your zone. So all the trees are literally 5 feet from one of our apartments, so 2 of our apartments, 5 feet. And our well is literally 20 feet off that line where you said you're gonna be digging below the water table. Our well is 25 feet from that, so it's literally 125 feet from where you're digging.
It's well outside of the area of influence for what we're proposing. And I understand your concern about the trees. Some of your improvements are right up against the property line, that don't, and they are legally non-conforming, I'm sure at this point, but they don't meet any required setbacks either. We're maintaining the setbacks that we're required to maintain for the excavation. In addition to that, we are willing to remove the trees that are threatened or threatening, based on an inspection by an arborist. I'm not a licensed arborist, and I presume that you're not either, but when a professional tells us which trees need to come down, those are the ones that will come down.
When will that happen? Hold on, if you have a question, you gotta say it at the microphone and we'll take it orderly. He still has the mic.
All right, and what, is there gonna be any noise control created? I mean, sound control created for the noise, because the motorcycle track's already noisy, and once you remove all these trees, you can make a 5-acre pond that's gonna echo across that lane.
Are you taking,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, go ahead.
So the Central Cycle Club's property is to the northeast on the other side of the road here. We are excavating the area that's shaded in tan. There's a 300-foot buffer that's going to remain still have a hill in this area that is going to remain forested. And so, yes, will there be planting in here? Absolutely. But the sound mitigation is going to occur in that 300-foot buffer along the river, which is, again, several thousand feet from the property.
I understand, but it's already loud, and all that land's gonna be removed. That's all trees that are now, helping us out, and now that's not gonna be there. The ponds will be there. All right. So if the answer is no, nothing on our end over here?
We're not proposing any additional sound mitigation. You also have the requirement of the zoning regulations met in terms of the 100-foot buffer for the excavation. That's a requirement that's been established by the commission and a very recent revision to their zoning regulations. And we made every effort to meet the requirements laid out in the town zoning regulations with this application. That 100-foot buffer being one of them.
And how often will this job site be inspected unannounced? Where you guys show there, go there?
Ryan, what's the inspection schedule for ongoing projects?
Katie and Sean try to get out once a week.
They know the date every time they come?
No.
And then if there are any complaints about the site, you can contact the zoning office and they can go out and inspect whatever the complaint may be at the time.
The phone number, please.
860-230-3030. It's one of the easiest numbers to remember. Okay, thank you. And there was another question from the audience.
Julie Maholsky, 810 Karen Drive. So what happens if a tree falls on our apartment building because of this? Because if he has an arborist come, how do I know he's not lining a pocket or something and they just say what he wants? It happens. Believe me, I work for the state. I can tell you it happens. And he can pay them off and they can say whatever he wants. What about me? Should I get an arborist? Should I get a lawyer and have them all talk?
So the trees are on the applicant's property.
Correct.
They're required to keep a buffer under our regulation. That buffer is a minimum 100-foot buffer.
Right.
If a tree should fall, it will fall under regular Connecticut state law as to responsibility of the tree. So it would not be a zoning issue at that point.
So potentially,
We only have so much scope and authority.
yeah, because the trees are probably over 100 feet, I'm guessing. And like I said, we had an arborist come and they said, you can't just take down a few trees, you could take down that whole mass about as tall as the trees are, as far away. So, it's 100, it's going to be close. Crazy.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members of the public?
Yeah, I'm back now.
You gotta say it loud and proud so the public can hear your question.
Go ahead, go ahead and just
Yep.
ask them why the pond.
Oh, it's a money grab. So back to the trees. I know there's zoning, but what about back to the pond? That's gonna be 5 acres of clear land where wind can clearly go through there. The trees are standing there now because there's a lot of trees, as our arborist said. Once some trees are all removed, they're a lot weaker because they don't have any green in the whole bottom 25 feet of them. And they're shallow root trees, they're not oaks or pines. So it's something to think about. And if you do care about the town, here's your chance to do something. I know you say that about all projects here, but here's your chance. Instead of making a full graphic there, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Any other?
I was just wondering why the pond.
Sure. Is there a pond currently on the property that's being expanded, Mr. Crowley's?
No, there is not.
Okay, so the depth of excavation, because it's going into the water table,
That's correct.
so why does the applicant need to go below the water table in that area?
We're proposing the pond for the agri the day, everybody wants their roads paved, they want concrete for their foundations, they want gravel for their driveways, it has to come from somewhere. And the regulations are in place to allow for this type of activity. We have proposed a project consistent with your regulations. It has received approval from the Wetlands Commission, it has received approval from the Connecticut DOT, and we have adhered to the regulations as they've been recently revised. So the idea that we're going in to excavate earth products, that's what our client's business is, and that's what we do. Unfortunately, this part of Connecticut is rich in gravel. You have it, Canterbury has it, Ridgeville has it, to a lesser extent, but that's what the material is. We don't get to pick and choose where it is. But unfortunately, it has to come from somewhere. This site is zoned appropriately for it. We can meet the regulations that are required to be met, and this is what we're proposing.
Any other comments from the public?
Art Gagny, 10 Jackson Road. I was gonna ask you about the trucking, but obviously you've got to think from the state. You might want to look on there if it indicates anything about speeds in that area, that it's a passing zone there. And I would imagine this average speed is probably 60 or so. So that might be an issue with trucks pulling out on that one. I have a question about that, the trucks. They say that it's going to be 50 a day, going, coming. They're going to go to 136 Black Hill Road. What's going to happen after there? Is that a processing plant now, 136? Is that the reason they're going there?
So this application is not having any processing, so the product is being removed from this site and moved to their neighboring site where the processing will occur.
Right.
So that is
So it
currently
does
a processing site, correct?
I didn't
Yeah.
know this. Okay. I've talked to people on Oak Drive from past, where there's an excavation site right there, sand in the pools, windows closed all the time. Talked to my neighbor, who's just northeast of 136 Black Hill, same thing. And this year, I have the same thing in my pool cover, sand. It must be from that processing plant. So, my thought is that, first I feel bad. I feel bad not only for myself, but the people on Oak Drive, I've seen it. For my neighbor, for the people on Toker Road, north and south, they're northeast of the gravel operation. The one that's just proposed at O&G across from the veterinarian, that's gonna hit La Pearl and Route 12, that's northeast of the gravel operation. Anywhere northeast of the gravel operation, like this one that we're talking about, is gonna hit our fire department in Central Village, it's gonna hit Fillmore Drive. You know, 100-foot buffer is okay, generally, but when the neighborhood is to the northeast of the plant, we're gonna get this. And so, I'm concerned, we're supposed to be making a better quality of life for our residents, not worse. So this is just one more that's gonna affect Fillmore Drive in that area. Because I don't care, dust control is probably used just on the roads that come in and out, I'm sure. They're not gonna wet down what they're digging and putting in the trucks like that. And that's what flies, So on this area, I'm concerned about all the rubber tires that were there too. Because they've broken down over the years, I'm sure. So now when you start, even if you take them out, there's gonna be particles of rubber that are gonna come up into the air, go down Fillmore Drive.
And I'll just touch on that a moment. So there is a note from staff that all unregistered inoperable motor vehicles, vehicle parts, campers, registered or otherwise, mobile homes, tires, and miscellaneous bulky items must be removed from the property with property inspected by the zoning officer or town planner prior to being issued a zoning permit to commence operations. So that
But
concern,
they won't see those particles that are embedded in that soil that's gonna be lifted
but they are
up.
cleaning up the bulky waste.
Yeah, right, I would hope so. And then lastly, about the 5-acre pond. I want to remind you, they asked about the large pond that was to be built at 0 Norwich Road last time they came for renewal. I I was told it wasn't suitable to be used, the materials weren't suitable. So could this happen here? And then we could not just lose the pond, but lose 4,500 square feet of wetlands for the road coming in, the access road. So, that's all I can.
What is the maintenance plan of the pond?
Thank you.
The maintenance plan?
Yeah, are they doing any kind of,
Once the pond is dug and the side slopes are stabilized, that's it, it gets left alone. And then we'll come to the pond.
so just once constructed, whatever nature does with the pond, that's what
Correct.
nature does with the pond?
That's correct, and that's consistent with several other operations, and ponds that the applicant prepared in other locations.
Any other comments from the public on this application? Any other comments or questions from the board? Any other items from staff? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June, second by Frank, to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item B, 25-6SP of DeWitt Barlow requesting special permit for a 24 by 42 detached garage with a 13 by 15 greenhouse at one end and bonus area above the garage. Property located at 470 Plainfield Pike, Assessor's Map 32, Block 58, Lot 5, RA60 zoning district. Is the applicant here this evening?
No, I'm just here to answer questions. They're not in town right now.
Okay, so we do have somebody representing the applicant. So as noted, it was a 24 by 42 detached garage, 13 by 15 greenhouse, and a bonus area above the garage. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone in the public with a comment or question on this application. Any comments or questions from board members? Any outstanding questions from staff?
No, I'll just briefly go over it. If you look at your packet, right behind the staff report, you can see.
Excuse me. Members of the public, we have a meeting that we are having. There are microphones and cameras, so we just want to make sure that the meeting information is picked up. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Right behind your staff report is an aerial photo. You can see the location of the garage is probably a good 1,000 feet away from any property lines. This is the former Boy Scout camp. The garage will be located near the house. The next couple of pages show the location of the garage, which is highlighted, and also what the garage will look like. It is a, I guess, a cape-looking style garage with a second floor. And there will be bonus area above, and it's a 3-car garage.
Any other questions from the public? Or questions from board members? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the public hearing.
Move to close.
Second.
Motion to close public hearing by Bart, a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item C, 25-2TA of Outfront Billboard, requesting a text amendment to section 13.5 of the regulations to add section 13.56.6 to allow for billboards along I-395. We are speaking for the applicant. Yes, please. Unless you're loud, like me.
Not that loud.
Good evening.
Not many people are.
I'll try to project. Good evening, my name is Brian Roser. I'm the real estate manager for Outfront. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak and to introduce this text amendment to the zoning code that regulates off-premise advertising. One, this amendment allows, excuse me, this amendment allows for a special permit application to modernize signage on the interstate only with LED technology. This may provide a revenue opportunity to a town-owned industrial bus depot along I-395. Two, it maintains the same number of billboards in town by requiring existing billboards to be removed. It allows a billboard to be moved to a more commercially appropriate site.
The number of possible sites, interstate only, are very limited through zoning and spacing requirements. 3, it requires a special permit applicant to provide the town with free digital advertising during the entirety of the billboard's operation. A digital billboard installed under this ordinance will have a greater social utility for the town and its residents than the billboards that are required to be removed. So, to recap, it allows for digital signs, it maintains the same number of billboards, so no new billboards, and it provides a free digital advertising for town initiatives. Thank you, and I'm available tonight for questions about this text amendment or digital off-premise advertising.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience with a comment or question about this application, this is your opportunity.
I don't understand why we need a 50-foot billboard that lights up at night and it's gonna disrupt the wildlife. It doesn't make much sense. So this for that, the town gets something if you let them build it, doesn't make any sense either. Sounds a little bit unethical, to be honest. Because I thought that's not how the town ran. That's about it. I just don't think it's not necessary.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone in the audience about this application? And if you want to form a line, you don't have to wait till the next one to speak. Feel free to line up.
My name is Earl Bragg from Plainfield. The question is, how come the billboard keeps coming up and it keeps being pulled down? So yet every time I turn around, it seems to be before you. And I don't know if you've ever traveled 95 going south and you've seen the billboards that look like eyesores. Who's going to maintain them? Who's going to pay for the upkeep? Hopefully not the town. But again, I don't know how many of you travel from here to South Carolina. I can count at least 200 billboards that look like they should be torn down and they're just standing there. So I'm against it myself.
Thank you.
I get talking, but I'm from California.
Wait, please have your name.
Yeah, just your
Oh,
name
yeah.
for the record.
Deanna D. Evans, Palmer Park. I'm from California, a place with the biggest and nastiest signage in the world, advertising everywhere. I moved to Connecticut because specifically this part of Connecticut for some of the best stargazing I've ever seen in my life. And seeing things like this and knowing how it impacts the environment with your sleep, the animals. I've never seen skies so dark in my life. At night in California, the skies are orange. And to see something like this coming to such a beautiful place with me, it's a step backwards from the identity we're trying to build. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public have a comment or question on this application?
Kevin Cunningham, 405 Musa Pond Road, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I'm asking the planning and zoning members to consider the voting in favor of this text amendment change being presented tonight. I believe that it's a more a fair way to offer a compromise to utilize the trade-off for taking out billboards along Route 12 and making these rural and character billboards to be now taken out of that area so you can actually have that rural character. I'm also understanding that we're looking to accentuate that area. Also allowing us to modernize along Trinity 5 and better upgrade that use. And I could be wrong, but I'll ask the question. If this was approved tonight, would we still have to have a company who wants to put something up for an application and therefore come in front of your board for approval or denial?
Under the text, it is a special permit use, so then an applicant would have to come forward to apply for a billboard.
I also heard what other people were talking about with other states and other places. This is Plainfield. I think what we're offering keep the number of billboards as is, but to be able to bring forth rural character by taking down those 2 billboards along Route 12, and be able to utilize the space we have up in our, some of the highway department, but that's where the application will come from. So again, I ask that you would please consider this as voting in favor. Thank you.
Ryan, just a clarification point. So in order for an applicant to apply for the special permit, they would have to own billboards on Route 12 that they would then be required to remove.
Or contract with an existing company that has billboards in town.
So then they would have to document that they have that ability to do that.
Yes, as part of the application process, they would present which billboards will be reviewed in order to move forward.
Now, the text that talks about the town advertising, it appears that could be outside the scope of planning and zoning because we cannot control the content of a billboard. So wouldn't that have to be part of a lease agreement with the town and not part of the zoning regulations?
It's written into the zoning regulations. It's something that the applicant is offering. So I don't think it's an issue. So
But under Connecticut general statutes, we can't control content, so we can't require that an applicant advertise town in our zoning regulations. It's outside our scope.
Well, we're not requiring the content. They'll enter into agreement with the board of selectmen. So we're not saying you have to have this content on your side. We're simply saying you have to provide advertising for the town and between the town and the applicant. Besides that.
Any other comments or questions from board members on this application? Or the public, still public hearing?
Mark Gagnon, Jackson Road. I am highly in favor of this proposal. I was in favor of it all along. With everyone wanting to move into the 21st century in communications, I don't know why this has been so hard. I've heard the arguments, and I don't think they hold weight. I drove the highway in that location a couple weeks ago. You got power lines all down the east side of the highway. You have an old sign advertising the industrial park, which is filled already. Route 12 a little further down. There's nothing scenic about it. As far as light, they look like any other billboard. And billboards that have lights pointed skyward towards them, as it is, which we don't really allow. So this would be a plus to that. I'm really excited that they want to take 2 down on our scenic Route 12. And I know the commission doesn't take money into consideration, but I can as a resident. With an offer from out front to run our town events on the board for free, and the revenue from renting the space, I would say this is a win all around. That's all. Thank you.
I just had some questions about if there's an assessment on how this would affect the town's home. They do take us use, and, just this afternoon, I had like a minor short in my house, in our neighborhood, a little bit. I wonder how that's going to affect pressure on infrastructure.
Could you address how the billboards are powered?
Sure. There's a lot of questions about the power usage of digital billboards for the, I'll answer for the Protect units that we use. And they draw 9.1 kilowatts, which is way less. Billboards, digital billboards have been around for a couple of years. A long time ago. And today, there's all LEDs that have a cooling system in them all. They draw 9.1 kilowatts. They also use about as much power a year as 1.5 houses. So I hope that addresses some questions. I also heard a couple other questions about modernize and upkeep, night sky, and town events. So I'm available to answer that question.
Go ahead, if you want to explain how that's maintained, how the billboards are maintained.
Okay, sure. Well, I can only speak for the billboards that my company operates in Connecticut. We've got 59 of the over 150 digital billboards in Connecticut. We maintain them, we operate them the first 5 years. And we have to visit the sites probably twice when we When you think about or look at static billboards, we think about the lights, the catwalks, the I-beams, the modern digital billboards that would be built under a special application in this ordinance are clean, no catwalks, no uplights, no clutter in that sense. When we talk about upglow and night sky specifically, the billboards that will be removed under this ordinance, under a special permit application under this ordinance, have big lights that are pointed up to refract light off of the vinyl surface of the advertising. Those go up. The ones, when we talk about in this corridor of the Northeast, the Architect product has these louvers above every single pixel in the whole digital face that prevents a glow up as the focus light come out. So it removes the ones that might have that concern. It replaces it with a product that is modernized, cluttered in that sense, and blocks the other. As far as the town events, there's a question about other towns. There's lots of towns in Connecticut that have some version of this ordinance. And they went to modernize their ordinance to allow for digital signage. Some examples of how this works is an operating agreement as part of the special permit application to be entered into between the town and the applicant to provide for this mandated advertising. Some of the cool projects, and this is a cool part of my job, and commitment that we can definitely library, summer reading programs, 4th of July, town parks and recs, fundraisers, animal wellness stuff. There's a lot of different examples, a lot of different interests of independent communities in Connecticut. I've got a small team that works on this every week, and it's a lot of fun for what we do. And I think it's really well.
Okay, thank you.
How many units does it put out versus?
So how many lumens we're talking about? Okay, there's two ways. There is good question. There's parts of this ordinance that kind of mirror what some of the state ordinances, the state regulations are. And there's nits, which is just the brightness of all illumination on the sign, and then there's footprints, which is the measure over lights. So ordinance, the state is footprints. There's automated dimming technology, just like the cell phone. When I'm reading my Kindle app at night, it dims way down, uses way less. The figures about power usage that I gave you earlier are throughout the year. I mean, that takes into account nighttime and also 4th of July. So we're required to use auto dimming technology. We want to use as least power as possible. So I think this says 7,500 nits as the regulation. I think it's 0.05 overhang for the regulation.
Sorry, if you could just speak up and say your question to the board so we can hear you, so we can make sure.
I just asked about the difference.
From a conventional billboard versus a digital one?
I don't have that information for a conventional billboard. I know that the conventional billboard is much brighter. It's not illuminated during the day. It's illuminated like an evening light. And it just comes out of the power, reflects off reflects off of the vinyl surface, towards traffic. It just goes everywhere. It's not a focused way. I don't have the information on what that is or what angle.
Any other comments or questions from the public on this application? Any comments or questions from board members?
We had pictures last time, what they looked like, what the building would look like. Do you remember that?
You're talking about the artist.
The previous application?
Yeah, we have. Didn't you have a picture? You have it?
This is the first application without fronting the applicant. I think I do have some. This is the next event was about the ability to bring a special permit application. Certainly, I think it would be required for standard application materials like designs, pictures. I can tell you what I'm thinking of for a project, and that's a 14 by 48. Just standard highway bulletin size that you see all over the place in interstate.
And was that off the road, right?
Right.
See it heading south? falling off the road.
Yeah, but
And
in,
say
in the
part of
spirit of this
deliberation.
application, though, you can't take that into consideration. This is
Well,
a
I-
different petitioner. Well, okay, but
Well,
this is a different
And
petitioner.
we're still in the public hearing part of the process, so deliberation will come after.
Okay,
the
all
public.
right, I just wanted to ask
Sure.
if it was a vote.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Yes.
Yeah, just one question.
If you could just state your name.
I'm Rory Simpson, live on Cemetery Road, and these signs you're talking about, it's a digital sign that looks like a big TV screen?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, that's what you were talking about.
If you walk up to them close, they look like a bunch of Christmas lights. But
Yeah, yeah.
From the highway, it looks like a street or something.
Oh, I've seen them. Travel around the world and I've seen them all over. And the only one thing I can say, they're clean, they're clear, they're bright.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public? Anything else from board? And any outstanding from staff? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second by Bart, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item D, 25-7 SP of John Brisson IV, requesting special permit for a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling unit in a commercial building located at 590-596 North Main Street, Assessors Map 4M, Block 111B, Lot 4, C2 zoning district. Do we have anyone speaking for the applicant this evening? Come on up and just give a basic overview of what you're doing.
So the commission knows your floor plan and your packet, or if you want that.
I'm John Brisson. I own the property at 590, 596 North Main. Just looking to convert the old Joey Seafood location to something that actually works as a property. I've got multiple businesses there that failed in the past. So rather than have a vacant space in the building, figured I'd utilize it and make an apartment.
And Ryan, you've already reviewed the application to ensure it meets the regulation.
I have.
Okay. And this is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience with a comment or question about this application, this is your opportunity. Any comments or questions from board members? And any other items from staff? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
A motion by June to close the public hearing and a second by John. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to item E, 25-1ZC of Stephen St. Germain, requesting a zone change of 34.16 acres on Cemetery Road from RA 60 to RA 30, Assessors Map 8, Block 48, Lots 11 and 13, owned by Langevin Realty LLC. Do we have someone who speaks for the applicant?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you have the microphone.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a land use attorney and a partner at the law firm of Tobin Carberry, located in New London, Connecticut. It's a pleasure to be before this board once again. I'm here on behalf of my client, Stephen St. Germain, who has a contract to purchase 2 parcels of vacant land encompassing approximately 34 acres in total, located on the southerly side of Cemetery Road and currently owned by Langevin Realty LLC. Mr. St. Germain has submitted an application to the commission for a zone change to rezone these 2 parcels from RA 60 to the RA 30 district. Joining me tonight in the audience in the front row is Mr. St. Germain. This is a public hearing tonight, and while our applications are simple and straightforward, I am required to build a record. I'm going to try to do that as quickly and as efficiently as possible because I know you have a lot of things on your agenda tonight. Tonight, I would remind you that you sit in your legislative capacity in evaluating our application, and you're directed by your state statutes to consider your plan of conservation and development and your comprehensive plan for zoning in your decision-making process. For the record, I would note that all public notice requirements have been met, including notice to nearby property owners and certification of that notice as required by your regulations. I have an additional handout that I'd like to pass out at this time. I'd like it to be
entered in an exhibit to the record? Just to orient you with the handout I submitted to you, the first page is taken from your plan of conservation and development maps. It is your village centers map. You'll see on that map there is a yellow area that's been highlighted. Those are the subject parcels. There is on the second page, that is an enlargement of that area showing the two parcels involved in the proposed zone change. You can see that those two parcels are located within your Plainfield Village Center, as defined in your plan of conservation development. Page 3 is another version. I know I submitted a version previously of the actual parcels. It's and your zone map. The red lines indicate the boundaries of the parcels involved in the application. The light sort of beige is the RA 60 district, which the two parcels currently sit in. You can see that there is orange, which is the RA 30 to the north and the northwest of the site. There's industrial across the Providence-Worcester Railroad, and you can see to the south is an RA 19 district along Pleasant Street. And the final document I have in my package is an aerial photo with parcel lines added, showing the area and showing the land uses around it, and some areas that I've called out as development areas on the site. The two subject properties that are part of this application, as I said before, are located southerly of Cemetery Road, and they're currently located within your RA 60 district. The two subject properties are located to the north of the site, are the old burial grounds and the new Plainfield Cemetery, which buffer the properties and residences across Cemetery Road to the north, and which sit in an adjacent RA 30 district along Lover's Lane. To the east of the site is the Providence-Worcester Railroad line. To the south, as I said before, is a dense neighborhood of homes along Pleasant Street. Again, it's zoned RA 19. And to the west, there is multifamily housing. That includes the Twin Oak Apartments and the Cross Creek condominiums, as well as Pond View on Cemetery Road. Pond View, as some of you may know, is another multifamily project. It is also owned by Mr. St. Germain, and it's immediately west of this site along Cemetery Road. The two subject parcels that are involved in this application, especially the larger western property, if you've been out there and you're familiar with the property, have inland wetlands on them that limit the development in the central portion of that land assembly. That being said, there are areas of both parcels that are quite suitable for development, especially along Cemetery Road, immediately adjacent to the Pond View development in the northwestern corner of the assemblage. There's also the possibility of some additional developable land in the southeast corner of the assemblage, accessed from the end of North Pleasant Street. Considering that there's public sewer available both on Cemetery Road and in the Pleasant Street neighborhood, both of these areas are well positioned for residential development and at a higher density. My client tonight seeks to rezone the entirety of these two parcels to the RA 30 district to allow the development potentially of multifamily dwelling units in these developable areas as permitted under your regulations. As you're aware, unlike the RA 60 district, the RA 30 district permits dwellings for more than one family, provided that there's at least 30,000 square feet of lot area per unit, and there are no more than 4 units in any building. Under the current RA 60 zoning, these two parcels that are part of the application would be limited to the development of only a few single-family dwellings occupying the same developable portion of the parcels. However, if this commission chooses to rezone the properties to RA 30, it opens up the possibility of using these very same areas more effectively for additional units. consistent with higher density zoning and uses that are already immediately adjacent to these parcels. In other words, tonight, rezoning these parcels allows for the more efficient development of this land, concentrating the development in the areas of the site that are suitable for development, and in turn, preserving the areas that aren't, which are the wetland areas. As I mentioned before, tonight you sit in your legislative capacity, and our state's zoning statutes direct you to consider your plan of conservation and development and your comprehensive plan for zoning, which, as I'm sure you're aware, is your zoning regulations and your zoning map read together in your decision-making process. Now, from my client's perspective, this is a straightforward zone change that is wholly consistent with your POCD. As you know, the 2018 POCD identifies the subject properties as just within the Plainfield Village area. That's in the handout that I showed you. The POCD strongly encourages new development and investment into Plainfield's defined village areas because that's where this community has spent the money to build the infrastructure necessary to support that development. The POCD also identifies the need for new quality housing opportunities in Plainfield and strongly supports the diversification of housing types for all different income levels within the community. With new employers moving into town, seniors looking to downsize, and young people looking for new, flexible, and affordable housing options, the need for multifamily housing in this community, quite frankly, has never been greater. With the availability of public sewers to this site, a rezoning of the properties to a higher density district, the RA 30, which allows some modest multifamily development, makes perfect sense. Rezoning will encourage the highest and best use of the developable portions of these two parcels, and it will lead to new housing units for new residents that will live near the Plainfield Village area and support the local businesses you have in that area of town. The rezoning is also consistent with your comprehensive plan for zoning. The subject properties are already immediately adjacent to the RA 30 district to the north and the west, and an even more dense RA 19 district to the south. This is not spot zoning, but rather it's the extension of an existing and adjacent R30 district into these two properties. In fact, if approved, the rezoning of these properties creates a more natural and expected gradient of zoning from north to south, rather than a lower density RA 60 zone sandwiched in between two higher density districts, the RA 30 and the RA 19. Tonight, my client and I would ask you to support our application for a zone change and allow us to pursue a development plan for the property, a plan that we would bring back before you at a later date for review and consideration. I certainly appreciate your attention tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions of the commission. I would also reserve my right to rebut and or respond to any public comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
This is a public hearing, so if you have a comment or a question on this application, this is your opportunity.
Jason Slozak, I live on Laurel Street. My property, I do have a piece of property that has lots of that. I have two sections, one on 5, one on 0. I have the apartment complex behind us, which is, so whatever it is. I can see that they developed the Over 55 complex down the bottom there. It used to be all woods, swamp. Off of my property, it's all swampland down there. Once you go further down the neighborhood, there's a nice big pond down there. I've been here 18, 19, 20 years, something like that. And I've tried to fish that pond. My children have tried to fish that pond. And I've always been told it's a conservation area. I do know Benjamin owns those properties back there. I know it's a cornfield, it was a grapevine at one point. I don't see the purpose of developing any of that. One, you're ruining the wetlands that's area there. Two, for all the people that live in that neighborhood, it's quiet. It's just woods. We don't have to look at more buildings. I wish I never bought my house when I did, and looking at the condos right out on that window. It's not a pleasant view. I don't think anybody else wants to see that. So as far as the zoning change, I do live next to an R60. I am R19. I did question about getting my zoning changed. few years back, because I had some things that were going on, and I was pretty much told I'm no way. So if I can't change it back to farmland, or do what I wanted to do, then why are we gonna take it from farmland and develop it into more buildings that are really unsightly? I mean, nobody wants to build a complex right there. But, sorry.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on this application?
Yep.
All right.
My name is Steve Broda, and I'd like to make a few comments. I've lived up on the end of Flint Street my whole entire life. I'm 70 now, so it's always been a cornfield. In fact, my father lived there. It was a hayfield, but it's been quite a few years now. It's been corn. Why? Oh, and another thing. That was, I was told, was a wildlife sanctuary. But now all that crap goes out the window for somebody to make some money. I don't think that area there was meant to have any housing, or for the most part, apartment building. It's ridiculous. You know, I'm sure they'd have to come down North Pleasant Street with the sewer lines. They'd have to have sewer lines in the end, town water. You know, where's that gonna go? Is it gonna go down North Pleasant, or is it gonna come off of, I can't even think of the name of the road now. Cemetery Road. I personally, I can't see it. I'm dead set against it. What happens when I'm dead, I don't care, but right now, I hope I have quite a few good years left. But, I can't, you know, of course you got the railroad there. And I know once he puts that building up, you're gonna have a lot of complaints, because you're right there where they blast the horn. I know I lived there, it don't bother me, but I lived there, I'm the last house, so. I definitely, I cannot see it. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Question for the applicant. Are there any conservation easements on that property? Or any areas that have been designated as conservation preservation?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Yeah. go ahead.
A couple questions. You're figuring out building
Excuse me, can I
behind.
get your name and director, please?
Oh, Denise on Cemetery Road. Thank you. You're planning on building behind the cemeteries? Is that what?
So just to clarify, tonight's application is a zone change request because currently with the RA60 zoning regulations, apartments are not allowed under the regulation in RA60 zone. So the current application before us is to change it from an RA60 to an RA30 because in an RA30 they could possibly develop apartments. So this is not a site plan or application specifically for apartments, but for a zone change that would allow for, just to clarify.
I want to picture where they're talking about. Is this behind the cemeteries?
So could you give a location, a more clear location using some landmarks that people might be familiar with?
And would you like me to do that now, or would you like to do that as part of our development?
If you could do that now to answer the question, that would be great.
As I testified previously, a large proportion of the property is wetland. You can't develop field wetlands in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So there are areas of the site for farm preference. One of those areas is directly adjacent to the Pondview development on the cemetery.
Okay.
And that does run for a portion of it behind the, I guess it's the old burial ground, or the old cemetery. There is some area, and that's the primary interest of my client, but again, that plan is not before the board tonight. The other area that's potentially developable would be at the end of North Pleasant Street. There's a large agricultural field there. It's quite high and set up above the
It is our property for sale. I too grew up in that area and spent the majority of my life there. It is a beautiful area. Lots of agriculture happened there. It is not a wildlife sanctuary, and it is actually all private property. At times, people were allowed to go there and, potentially fish or whatnot, but it was always private property. And if anybody has any questions about the property, like I said, I've lived there my entire life, except for the last year, so I can certainly answer some questions. I guess no one really wants to ever see a beautiful piece of land change or get developed. However, we do live in a time where housing is in shortage. Affordable housing is in great shortage, and my family actually made the decision to put this land on the market, and we went to Steve. He had some good ideas. I know he has a love of the land as well, because he also grew up in the neighborhood on Leicester Street? Pine Street, which is across from Cemetery Road. So if anyone has any questions regarding the land itself, I'm able to answer those questions.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public?
Christine Lange in Earhart. Joanne is my sister. My family owns the property. And I too understand the neighbors looking out and saying, we don't want any more building up. But as the attorney has pointed out, this is in the town center. Joanne said, again, and I will reiterate, there is very little available affordable housing. That's a gravel pit. It's a gravel pit. I suppose we could be thankful that he wants to do that, rather than having Rossins come in and dig the gravel out of it. That is, that program. I'm sorry, we've skated on that pond. You want to talk? We've skated on that pond, we've enjoyed that pond, we fished there, we've sledded there, but now's the time for change. And you talk about the misunderstanding of the conservation issue. A lot of it was insurance. We didn't want people going down there, getting their hook caught on something, falling in and drowning. I'm a lifeguard, so that's really a soft spot for me. The pond is always going to be there. The wetlands are always going to be there. That Revolutionary War cemetery is not going to change. It's there, it's protected. So, I can call it my own personal gravel pit. Steve can call it a potential new site for affordable housing in town, which is of a critical need. And it's your decision here now. But the wishes of our family, or the wishes of our family, are that the property now be sold. It's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the public?
I was just curious, how many units are going to be put in?
Okay, so to be really clear, this is a text amendment change tonight. It's not a specific application for an apartment complex. So
I was just curious because it says RE60 to RE30.
Correct.
And he said that he was going to be able to get more out of cutting it in half. So I was wondering what's the difference? Like how many more units on RE30 versus RE60?
Okay, so RE60 apartments are not currently allowed.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of the change, so that it would allow for other uses not allowed in the RE60 zone. So just to, for public awareness, when we're looking at an RE60 zone, by right, it allows single-family detached dwellings, agricultural operations, the keeping and breeding of animals, seasonal stands, golf courses, churches, places of schools, public or private, cemeteries, hospitals, mobile homes, accessory uses. Then there's also special permit uses in an RA 60 zone, municipal uses, elderly housing, accessory dwelling units, group daycares, child daycares, dog kennels, recreational campgrounds, earth excavation, bed and breakfast, indoor equestrian, commercial agricultural buildings, agritourism, and breeder kennels. So with a change to an RA 30 district, the RA 30 uses would change to by right, must be connected to public sanitary sewer required. So that is not a requirement of the RA 60 district. Single family detached churches, places of worship, schools, public and private, accessory uses, incidental to the home occupations, dwellings for more than one family, municipal uses. The special permit uses include garden apartments, municipal uses, elderly housing, accessory dwelling units, group daycare, child daycare, recreational campgrounds, earth excavation, convalescent homes, and the multifamily resident development. So those are the changes we're looking at. What's allowed in RA 60 versus what's allowed in RA 30.
Could the area support it being turned into RA 30, RA 30 to support?
So Ryan, the property is within the public city sewer hookups, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other?
I am Pat Broder. I live on the North Pleasant Street. Personally, I don't want to see it changed. We live at the end of the road. It's a beautiful view that we have. I don't really feel like looking at apartments if, they go up there. I understand that, it was always private property. And, our kids were told not to go down there, and whatnot. And, because it was a bird sanctuary, that's what we were told. But, now we have ATVs, says, well, it's dead end, no trespassing. You see ATVs going down there, doing wheelies and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, the price is kind of like shot. So, I don't know. I mean, I just say leave it alone, but it is what it is. I understand people need housing, but I'm sure there's a lot of empty buildings in Plainfield that you can knock down and, renovate into apartments, but it is what it is.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Any other comments or questions from?
Yes, I just heard from the owner that was never considered a sanctuary. Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, the audience, we're trying to hear the speaker. Thank you.
I can remember that. We couldn't go down. And I don't even get down the property now. We got people go through their ATV, motorcycles, and they're riding along my property line full bore, kicking up rooster tail. I finally yelled at the guy the other day. Not at all, not at all. I don't think it's gonna last, but and I also hear this thing that we got all kinds of employment here and this and that. Where? We've got Lowe's. I'm sure there's a lot of people from town that work there. But that's not going to carry all these people I want to bring in. You got this new place there. What is it, Uline? Well, I'm kind of wondering how that's going to be. You got, what is it, Amazon coming in. And are all these people going to get jobs at these places? I kind of doubt it, because I don't think they pay like places
Sir,
like.
we need to bring your comments related to this application. So the jobs of the other industries, we have to talk about the zone change. So do you have comments related to whether or not to change this from the RA 60 to the RA 30?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, no, I don't support it.
Okay. comments or questions from the public?
Can I say it from here?
If you can say it loud.
Art Gagny. I just want to remind you, we have an affordable housing plan. We have the plan of conservation and development, and they both call for affordable housing. And lately, we've been putting market price housing up, new houses and stuff that aren't affordable. And I worry without affordable housing like this, that we're going to go below, and then we'll be open to developers. So keep that in mind. We do have an affordable housing plan that calls for multifamily housing. Thank you.
Any other comments for the public? Yeah.
I just have one question.
If you could say your name for the record and
My
speak
name is
loudly.
Mary.
Thank you.
I live in Moosehead. My question is, because I've been trying to follow this, what he wants to build, is it affordable housing? With the change, if the change were to go through, is that the reason?
For the record.
And Richmond Titus, the only, it's about a 34 acre property. The only agricultural piece of it is probably about, about 8 to 10 acres. And for the many, many years, we've grown cow corn there, local farm.
So don't overestimate this property. And Steve, I'm sorry that you feel like the end of the street is being invaded, but that has been private land for ever. We've had that private road that went through there. There's nothing but a headache.
Yes, and we never went. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen, we're not gonna have a private debate or discussion. If that's
Anyway,
something-
it's not conservation, it's not bird zone, it's private land. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have another comment you wanted to make for the application? Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public? State your name and loud.
Heather Brisson. I mean, is there any way to say that these apartments are gonna be affordable if it changes?
So that would be part of the special permit process. If an apartment is applied for, that information would be during the special permit process.
So that's nothing, sorry.
That's okay. Nope, it's a great question. All right, any other comments or questions from the public? Yeah, if you could state your name.
Lori Simpson, I live on Cemetery Road. How many apartments are we talking about?
So there's not a current application for apartments. What this is a zone change from an RA60 zone to an RA30 that would allow for apartments. If the applicant decided to pursue apartments, they would have to come back with a special permit application, which would include the specifics of how many apartments, what the building would look like, the parking, if there was affordable housing, all that level of detail would happen in a special permit process, which requires a public hearing. So it is a separate process at that stage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Yeah, Rory Simpson, Cemetery Road. One quick question on the RA60, RA30. Is there a size difference?
Yes. So by regulation, it's a lot size difference. So when we're looking at what is required, so in our zoning regulations, there's residential districts and bulk tables. So then the minimum lot area for an RA60 is 60,000 square feet, whereas an RA30 is 30,000 square feet. So there's less land required for an RA30 zone.
Okay, that's why it was a little confusing that when you have a smaller lot, you can put apartments on it.
Correct. It's more dense
Doesn't
housing.
make sense.
It's more dense housing.
Okay.
So
Thank
the
you.
RA60 is less dense, the RA30 is
Got it.
more dense. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I want to say, Joanne Lanchman, I did read the articles or whatever you want to call them. And one of the things, if you're concerned when we're not talking about apartments, I'm sorry I brought that up. I didn't really intend that to come about. But one thing that I did read, if you do put multifamily housing there, you also have to allow for open space, if I read that correctly.
It depends on the type of development.
So that you have, so it's not just like building, you also have to allow for surroundings of the buildings for guess it's called recreational, uses. But leave it that listed.
Did the applicant have any additional clarifying comments?
Madam Chairwoman, I appreciate the opportunity just to give a quick rebuttal and response. We heard comments from a number of members of the public. I apologize, I don't mean to butcher your names. There was a gentleman from Laurel Street who was concerned of the impact of the zone change on the wetlands, and that the wetlands might be ruined. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, what this potential zone change does is set up a situation where the developable portions of the property can be used for a reasonable economic return. And that leaves open the areas that are not developable, the pond, the wetlands, to be able to put them into permanent and perpetual protection and conservation, something that doesn't exist today. I think it's a great opportunity. It's a very scenic site. It's a site that will actually help us actually sell housing units by preserving that and protecting that for generations to come. There was a concern that also voiced that these are quiet woods that other people have enjoyed. And certainly I appreciate the fact that people might enjoy the property next to them that they don't own. But the key point there is that they don't own it. This is, as you heard today, the Langdon testified. This is privately owned land, and it's been land that's been held in that family for quite some time. They, like every other property owner in this town, have a right to get reasonable use and reasonable economic return from their property. And they and their agents, basically through contract here, have a right to come before this board and petition for a zone change. I would also point out that because there was no state road involved, the multifamily residential development regulation for special permit, which I authored and this commission adopted a couple of years ago now, does not apply right now to this property because there's no state road involved. So you're left with a very, very limited and modest multifamily use. And I would point out the fear of big apartment buildings is just not reality. The apartment buildings under the current regulations are limited to no more than 4 units in any building. So this, again, compared to what you might see in multifamily in places like Norwich or New London, this is a completely different scenario, a completely different regulatory framework. It's much like this kind of smaller, less intense apartments that you see in places like Pondview, which my client owns. Mr. Boda, expressed some concerns about it being a cornfield and a wildlife sanctuary. I think you've heard testimony tonight that it is not a wildlife sanctuary. There is water and sewer immediately adjacent to both of these properties. There doesn't need to be any major extensions. The water is there, it's available. It's on your own GIS mapping, you can see it for yourself. So there's no concern about not having the infrastructure to support that additional density. If you follow the Providence-Worcester rail line north to Worcester and down, all the way down to our shore, you will find housing developments throughout and along that rail line. The idea that people don't live near rail lines, particularly infrequently used ones like the Providence-Worcester, I think that's a fallacy. There are residential development throughout Eastern Connecticut along that track. And I think Mr. Boda also made my case. He listed off some of the major employers that are coming into this town, and you need housing more than ever in this town because you want to capture people who are coming to work in these new facilities that you're building. You don't want them moving to Canterbury. You don't want them moving down to Norwich. You don't want them moving to Killingly. You want them to live here. Why? Because you want them spending money in your local small businesses. You want them going to your restaurants. You want them shopping at your supermarket. You want them to keep those dollars locally. So you need to have places for these people to live. I think the Langdons did a very good job explaining their history of ownership. I think the most important thing here is by rezoning this property and allowing Mr. St. Germain to now go to the next step, explore a potential development plan. There's an opportunity to protect the things that people like about this property. The pond, the beautiful natural areas that aren't going to be touched, and then use the areas that are suitable for development for some reasonable economic return. I would also say, and I appreciated the comments, I believe, of the woman in the front row about there being ATVs ATVs and trespassers going down North Pleasant. Well, I can tell you this, I can't speak because I don't represent the Langdons, but I do represent Mr. St. Germain. If this zone change goes through, he will be moving forward on the purchase of this property, and he has the ability to police that and stop that. So the issues of trespassers, illegal, illicit ATV use, we can put an end to that right now. It's not something that he's going to permit on the property under his ownership, and hopefully that might add, be something to offset some of the concerns that we've heard tonight. I would note that we have a lot of work to do, even if this rezone takes place. As you know, in a site plan or a special permit application, we need to submit engineered plans. We've got to do geotech. We have to do design, grading. We've got to go to the Wetlands Commission first. There's a lot of work. There's literally months. And I would caution tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in soft costs to put together a plan of this nature. I can't tell you what the housing type's going to look like. I can tell you what your regulations allow today, and those are no more than 4 units in a building. And 30,000 square feet of lot area per unit, which is a very, 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 in my experience, a very expansive or heavy requirement for multifamily housing. But what we can do is, as we go forward, we'll come before you, we'll be able to lay out a plan that makes sense. But no developer, no bona fide developer would spend that money without knowing first the zone change and that the use was actually even permitted in that zone. So tonight is really just the first step. Tonight's the first step to say, yeah, we want to allow Mr. St. Germain to now explore what could happen in this property. And we got to come back to you with that plan, a plan that makes sense, a plan that's been properly vetted. So again, I want to thank you for your time and attention tonight. I would ask for action on this zone change this evening, and certainly remind you, if you're going to approve this application, make sure that you make an effective date for the zone map change as well. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Any other comments or questions from board members? Any final comments from community members? Any additional comments from staff? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion to close. Second by Bart, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is closed. Moving on to the regular meeting, I call the regular meeting to order. I saw there are no additions or corrections to agenda. Is that correct, Ryan? There is one. Where was it? I missed it. I apologize. How did I miss that? What is it, Ryan? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so one item. Item B, 25-11SP of Roma Construction, requesting a modification of an existing earth excavation and removal permit for property located at 1260 Norwich Road, Assessor's Map 5, Block 3, Lot 1, Industrial 1 Zoning District. If we could motion that onto the agenda as new business B.
So moved.
Second that.
Motion by Bart to add, second by June. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you for that one. Right there. All right, citizen participation. This is opportunity to address the board on an item that is not an open application. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the unfinished old business. Strategic Commercial Realty Inc. Item A, 25-2SP, requesting special permit for earth excavation and removal on property located at 64 Black Hill Road, Assessor's Map 7, Block 78, Lot 19, RA 60 Zoning District. Items for discussion on this application.
I have a problem with it because there have been a lot of neighbors there that have reported the traffic is heavy enough that they feel it would be dangerous to have another operation. And in Brian's notes, were there 100 trucks or 50 trucks a day on that road, on Black Hill Road?
The application states 50 round trips.
I thought I saw 100 somewhere.
Well, 100 each direction, 50 trucks.
Okay. And I would like to table this so that I could read, and we could all read the DOT report from the state. It seems like we get 2 minutes to look at it and we have to pass it down. We're not getting a good look at this. This is the biggest problem from the neighbors there. They're worried about that particular location. So I'm just proposing that we table it until we can really read
Ryan, in regards to timelines, the public hearing is closed, and we have 65 days to decide? Okay, so we do have room in the timeline for board members to read the traffic information that was presented tonight to make a better informed decision on the application. So are you motioning?
Yes, I'm motioning.
Okay, so I have a motion by June to continue the deliberation of this application in order to review the traffic study. Do I have a second on that motion? I'll second the motion. Motion is on the floor to continue to allow for time to read the traffic study. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, since it's a split vote, I'll just ask for a roll call vote. Carla Desjardins, aye.
June Gagnon, aye.
Or Haskell, nay.
She's not voting no.
Frank Mills, no.
Okay, so if the motion to continue has been approved on a 3-2 vote, so this will be continued to the next meeting. Moving on to item B, 25-1 SPL of Roma Construction, Inc., requesting 2 additional buildings and property located at 6 West Parkway, Assessors Map 17, Block 11, Lot I-30, IP zoning district. Do we have someone speaking for the applicant? Do we have this application?
So the applicant is requesting to continue because they're not ready to present.
Okay, so given the applicant is requesting its continuance, I'll entertain a motion to continue. I have a motion by John to continue and a second by June. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is continued. Item C, 25-6 SP of DeWitt Barlow, requesting a special permit for a 24-by-42 detached garage with a 13-by-15 greenhouse at one end and bonus area above the garage. Property is located at 470 Plainfield Pike Road. Any items for discussion on this application? I think it was a pretty straightforward application.
I'd move to approve with the following recommended conditions. Number 1, proof of NDPH approval is required prior to receiving the building permit to construct. 2, the bonus area is not to be considered a dwelling unit. And 3, no kitchen is to be installed within the building.
Okay, we have a motion by Bart with, sorry, did you make a motion? I'm sorry.
I did.
Okay, so we have a motion by Bart to approve with conditions as read. I have a second by Frank. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is approved with the conditions as read. Item D, 25-2TA of Outfront Billboards, requesting text amendment to 13.5 of regulations to add section 13.56.6 to allow for billboards along IN 395. Items for discussion on this application.
I think a current looking billboard would be a lot better than those 2 that are on Route 12.
Sounds like we're trading one problem for another, though.
I don't see it as a problem.
Hold on, June.
Okay. Well, you're saying swap one for one. The overwhelming public sentiment has been we don't want
But they don't
billboards.
go with all.
Okay, but I'm simply trying to.
Spirit of
Okay.
deliberation.
June, I'll yield the floor as long as you give me a chance to
Well,
speak.
I haven't really
All I'm saying is that I really don't see the delta here, other than we get a couple torn down, we're adding a couple new. We're still exposing 395 as a corridor to this type of advertising. It's consistently inconsistent with the POCD. That's what we previously stated, that's what we previously discussed. I understand that docking is not up for revision for a couple of years, but on precedent, we've already turned it down once based on the basic description we have here. The only change I see is the guarantee that the town will be able to use it. I don't see that as a major contributing factor to improvements.
June, you had additional comments?
No, that's all right, forget it. Do whatever you want.
Frank or John, do you have additional comments?
Your vote counts as much as mine. I'm not fighting with you, June.
We have 5
I
votes.
see the vision, I see what it looks like in my mind, I know what it looks like, it's not me. That's all.
Frank?
Oh, I'm in favor of it. I like new signs.
John, you have any items to add?
Well, the last time this came before us, I not in favor of it, and I'm not in favor.
So in comparing the language that was denied a few months ago, The language that changed was the swapping out of old versus new, and then the text regarding the town's ability to advertise. I still question the legality of that language because I think it falls outside our scope because of the content in the state statute. In thinking about the plan of conservation and development, the last application, we talked about maintaining the rural and semi-rural landscape of the town. I would say that some of the older billboards have become part of the landscape. So swapping them out doesn't necessarily serve a purpose of offsetting what the modernized billboards would be. The modernized billboards can be as tall as 50 feet tall, digitally illuminated, double-sided, 14 by 48, restricted to highway, but still ultimately changing that landscape. So I would just have that as the point of consideration in the review of the application.
I thought they were restricted, it was gonna be on 395.
Correct, restricted to 395. Yep. So any other items for discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by John to deny the application. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, but a point of order, I thought under procedures of votes of this nature, we have to bring it as a vote to approve and then vote in
So
negative.
what will happen is if a motion to deny fails,
Yeah.
then a motion to approve must be made. So to simplify procedure, it is recommended that motions be made in the affirmative so that the yes or no vote prevails without an additional.
Okay.
So if John would like to, or anyone else would like to present a motion in the affirmative, you could withdraw your motion, John, or proceed with it as you see fit. Just knowing if it fails, it'll be a
Just
second.
for the record, I'll make a motion to approve.
So we have John's motion on the floor first, so we just have to either have John withdraw his motion or proceed with voting on the motion.
John's motion is to deny.
Correct, John has motion on the floor to deny. Are you gonna withdraw that motion?
Just to keep things straight, I'll withdraw that.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn. June, you
I'll
want
make
to
a motion to approve.
All right, June has made a motion to approve. Do I have a second on that? Frank has seconded the motion. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no.
No.
No, and since it's a split vote, we'll have a roll call vote. Carla Desjardins, no.
Ron Meyer, no.
June Gagnon, yes.
Bart Haskell, no.
Frank Mills, no.
All right, so the application has been denied on a 3-2 vote. All right, so failed to approve. All right, moving on to item E, 25-7 SP of John Brisson IV, requesting a special permit for a 2-bedroom accessory dwelling unit in a commercial building located at 590-596 North Main Street, Assessors Map 4M, Block 111B, Lot 4, C2 zoning district. This application did meet all regulation. Any items of discussion on this application?
I would move to approve with the following condition that the special permit is be recorded and a zoning permit is required to construct the apartment.
Okay, so I have a motion by Bart with conditions as read. I have a second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is approved with conditions as read. Item F, 25-1ZC of Stephen St. Germain requesting a zone change of 34.16 acres on Cemetery Road from RA60 to RA30. Items for discussion on this application. Want to start us off?
I like the idea of having some specific, changing it so that we can have something different besides gravel pit and bikes going.
So just to be clear, gravel excavation is still an allowed use in the RA30 zone. So it wouldn't stop the ability of an applicant.
No,
to
but I'm
gravel
saying that's
outside.
what's happening with the land, that it's being invaded.
But what it does allow is less dense development.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to approve zone change.
Okay, would you include an effective date with that? Recommended
June
June.
first.
June
Do we
1st.
need a meeting date or just June
No,
first?
just a date.
Just an effective date of regulation.
June first.
So we have the motion by June to approve the application with a effective date of June 1st. And I would just add that given the location and the proximity to the sewer and water hookups, that it is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. It is an area that could support that level of development. And a lot of the more intense uses like the apartments are special permit, which means they would have to come before the board and the public again. So there is a level of control in that application process. So we do have a motion by June to approve with the effective date of June 1st. Do I have a second? I have a second by Frank. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is approved with an effective date of June 1st.
Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Item G, 25-5 SPL of Ron Lyman requesting a modification to a previously approved site plan. Do we have the applicant here this evening? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
I have a motion to continue by Bart, second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Application is continued. Moving on to new business. Item A, 25-10 SP, William Kuchar requesting to convert a 499 square foot office to accessory dwelling unit. This requires a special permit, so that'll be a public hearing. I'll entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by June to schedule a public hearing at our next regularly scheduled meeting, which I believe is June 10th.
Yes.
All right, and a second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, no abstentions. Scheduled public hearing in June. Item B, 2511 SP of Roma Construction requesting modification of existing earth excavation. This also requires a special permit
Yes, it does.
and a public hearing. So I'll entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing.
Let's do that. Make that motion.
All right. June has motioned to schedule a public hearing in June, and John has seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is scheduled for June.
Madam Chair, question.
Yeah.
Is this the second application from Roma Construction? Do we now have dueling applications at this time for the excavation site?
So this is a modification of existing earth.
But they have another one before us also.
Then they have a site plan for additional buildings on a different property.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
It was unclear as to why we had to.
Yep, that's it. All right, review and act on the minutes of the March 8th and the April 8th meetings. Do we have any, and actually, wasn't it the March 11th meeting? Right? So I think it was the day before my birthday, and that's the only reason I remember.
March 11th.
Okay, so if we can get that corrected to March 11th. So review and act on the minutes of the March 11th and April 8th meetings. Any items for modification or revision on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
I have a motion by June to accept.
Second.
Second by Bart, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting minutes are accepted. Any correspondence?
We have no correspondence.
Okay. Report from zoning enforcement. All right. Report from planning.
We have selected a firm to help us out with the Lusa River Trail, which this will be a connection going from the northerly portion, which is up by the hatchery, down to Lusa Center by the Lusa Dunkin' Donuts, where we have the trail that goes over the bridge over the river. So that firm will be helping us come up with a route for the trail. And it's going to take probably a couple of years before we can construct, but this is the first step.
Thank you. Report from engineering.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Moving on to other. So we're continuing our discussion regarding the advisory letter to the Siting Council. I did request to staff that we talk with the town attorney, Rich Cody. It is recommended by the Siting Council that legal representation be there. No application has been filed yet, which is kind of the triggering event for our letter. Did you have an opportunity to talk to Rich?
I did. Council has informed us that the town can act as an intervener, but that would be basically through the selectman's office, the board of selectmen, I should say. So the commission can work with the board, but the commission cannot be an intervener themselves.
So it would be the town of Plainfield. All right. So did Rich outline the process to become, and I know there's a party and intervener, so there's two different statuses. It appeared that party makes you more able to present evidence in addition to whatever letter we may compose, so that it gives us a greater role in the process. So could Rich determine what the differences are between party and intervener? And I believe state statute does give us, as the board, the ability to hire staff, which means should the Board of Selectmen not support becoming a party to the application, I believe the board has the statutory authority to do so without the Board of Selectmen.
That is a possibility. He was speaking from the standpoint that the Board of Selectmen will let you take the interview to status.
Okay. Question, could there be two? Would it be the Board of Selectmen as one party and then the Planning and Zoning as a separate party? Or would it be under one umbrella of Town of Plainfield?
According to council, the under one umbrella.
Okay. So could we make sure that we present to the Board of Selectmen that we want to pursue the party status as soon as the Siting Council application is filed?
We can do that. I also believe there will be a referendum, non-binding referendum, to see where the town stands on this.
So like a public opinion poll?
Correct.
That's non-binding, meaning it has no impact on the Siting Council decision, but could be used as evidence of public support or not?
I believe that is the intention, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Art. All right. Anything else you want to include or question about our process moving towards the Siting Council?
Is there anything we can do to reach the people that are closer to Hartford? Because I feel like the local reps and the boards and commissions are being overrun.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if it would come from our office or from the selectmen, but I think it's upon all of us to make sure our state representatives understand that when local zoning control is taken out of our control, that it's not a good thing.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking even our local reps don't have as much power as the people in Hartford that are deciding these things.
But remember, it is the state representatives and state senators who wrote the law that gave this Siting Council this power. So if the state reps and the state senators don't want the Siting Council to have this level of power, they need to change the law. That's where we are. So right now, the Siting Council is operating on state law as it's written. So we have to participate in that process until they change the law. Yeah. So I've been talking to my state reps. I have been.
That's what I'm saying. They got more control.
Yeah, and I don't think there'll be any changes to law before this application is presented.
I think we're gonna have to fight it at the town.
Well, they're gonna have to have mercy on us because nobody wants us.
So the problem is, the way I understand the city council was formed sometime in 1972 as a public infrastructure benefit, particularly as it related to power. So the justification was, you need to put this infrastructure in your town because it benefits the 12 towns around you. That is the case example that was provided to me. So under that concept, the city council has the ability to override what they call home rule here in New England, that we can govern ourselves, because it is for the benefit of the gross majority of the people in the state of Connecticut. That is the sentiment you're fighting. When you look at the city council, that's how we got the wood burning plant. That's how a lot of people end up with these infrastructure components, because the towns don't want it, but it's for the benefit of the state. It's the good of the many versus the good of the few. And that's what I've been able to glean from the city council's justification.
This is strictly for electrical.
So that definition has expanded over the years to things like cell phone and communications towers, because they are for the public benefit that those things exist. But it was chartered under power. That was the original infrastructure.
This is tied into waste.
So the proposal is a waste plant that generates power, and that's how the city council has the ability to hear it, because it generates power. If it was just a waste disposal, I actually don't think they could sit in front of the council, because then it wouldn't be too entitled to power.
And because it generates more than 1 megawatt of
Yes.
power. So remember the solar fields that come before us?
Yep.
So because those are less than 1 megawatt, that's why they're within local control. As soon as they go above 1 megawatt, then it goes to the Siting Council jurisdiction.
Yep.
So we are just in the very beginning of this process. No application's been filed yet. I will keep you posted. I am working with staff, and I hope to talk to the town attorney, and we'll make sure that we work with the Board of Selectmen so that we can get that party status, which just gives us a greater involvement.
The Board of Selectmen decided last month attach this to the referendum.
So I did hear Ryan say that, so
Yes.
it's like a public opinion poll.
Right, and
anything else for the good of the order?